Hey, have you heard? Bambi is getting a modern 2023 photorealistic remake.
Bambi.
But whoa. Let's take a minute, let's take a deep breath, and let's remember before we get too excited, it is Disney and it is a 2020s remake. And well, there hasn't been such a good history of those in the past. In fact, most of the recent remakes that I can think of, that most of us can think of, have been failures. In fact, it's quite rare to find a modern remake that is not a failure. But before I make one conclusion one way or another, perhaps I should listen up to somebody attached to the production, specifically Lindsay Anderson Beer, who's a woman who was on the scriptwriting team as part of the team attached to Bambi. And let's listen up to what she has to say about the Bambi movie.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about Bambi to me is it absolutely is a classic, and it's a beautiful love poem, such artistry to it.
So that's it. You heard her. A great movie, a mastery of film and art. And most importantly, a classic. Now, a classic is something that is good across time. It's not just good in the moment. It's not just good because of the era or the specific time that's written in. It's good forever. The Greek masterpiece, The Odyssey, is something that is a classic. Beowulf is a classic. Shakespeare is a classic. None of these things, none of these properties or authors or whatever else that are considered classics of literature, of film, of art, these things are not considered good merely because, well, at the moment, based on the trend, they were good. No, they are good across time. They are remarkable, period, full stop. That's it. You're done. They're remarkable for all time. So, of course, a classic does not need to be changed. That's the definition of a classic. And when we talk about classic films, we're talking about films that can speak to any audience. So, of course, there aren't any changes that would need to be made, right? Right, Lindsay?
It's a little bit different tempo than I think modern audiences are used to. And I also think there's a treatment of the not to spoil the plot, but there's a treatment of the mom dying that I think some parents these days are more sensitive about than they were in the past. And I think that's one of the reasons that they haven't shown it to their children. But I do think that there is a way to update Bambi.
So it turns out she actually doesn't think it's a classic because, well, if modern audiences don't like it, well, then it's not a classic. Then it's not so great. It was just a fad. It was just a thing. Even though actually initially, fun fact, Bambi didn't do that well because it was put out in the middle of World War II. So when things are dropping and there's a war on, yeah, it's not going to do so great. But of course, subsequently, it was adopted, given multiple accolades, awards in the National Film Registry, the Library of Congress. It's something that has been universally acknowledged as a masterpiece of film and art. However, Lindsay doesn't think so. She thinks that it needs to appease the TikTok generation. It needs to appease a shorter time and attention span, rather. It needs to appease our modern sensibilities in order to be called a real classic, in order to really meet those criteria. So what she's going to do is going to do that, right? She's going to do better, like Rachel Zegler wants to do. And beyond that, there's this treatment of the mother. Now, of course, you know, we all know that Bambi's mother dies. I know, spoilers here, but once again, it's dealing with the conflict between man and nature in this kind of situation, this balancing between man and nature and the realities of it. Sometimes nature is a harsh mistress. Nature can sometimes be pretty freaking metal. And because of that, because nature is tough, because nature is hard, because things die, animals eat each other, things like that happen, well, portraying that as part of the film is a very real part. And it was back in this era in which people put these concepts, these deeper concepts in all sorts of movies. Even movies that were intended for children had deeper messages of man versus nature, because obviously man needs to survive. They do need to live off and with nature, but there's the balance of nature and the ecosystem and the unintended consequences of man. Yeah, that's exactly the complicated thing that Bambi showed. And I think it did it in a masterful way. But of course, that's not all we need to change. There's so much more that Lindsay wants to change. Listen,
our take on it was did give a little bit more of a scope to it, and I just think that to be able to bring it to life for kids these days in a way that maybe they relate to a little bit more would be of service to the original.
To add scope to it, scope. So that means they're planning to zoom out to look at it from a broader modern perspective. Yeah, we all know what that means. That means they're going to pull out and look at the modern political context. Politics, despite what Iger said, are going to remain an integral part of Disney and Disney IP. They're going to pull out and they're going to look at things like economics. They're going to look at things like pollution. And certainly, above all, we do know they're going to talk about climate change.
Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
But even more deviously than Greta Thunberg could imagine, Disney is likely thinking about adding messaging on something else, something that is intrinsic to the law, intrinsic to court cases, and intrinsic to the United States, and that is the Second Amendment and our Second Amendment rights. Those rights have been under siege, and right now, more than ever, there is a push for action. And I will not just say that myself, but leave it to one of the biggest gun control grifters out there to explain it himself.
We now have the most pro-gun reform president, at least on paper, and Congress in American history. And I do believe that this time can be different because I think Americans are tired of the division and just debating.
So as you heard from the #1 control grifter out there, David Hogg, there's absolutely a push right now, here and now, while we have a Biden presidency, while we have the right political climate to push this. And you better believe they are going to try to push this as part of the movie. They're going to try to push hunting bad, guns bad. And on top of that, you better believe that the villains, the evil people that are going to be in this, well, of course, they're going to be straight white men, because that's got to be what it is. The only acceptable villain is a straight white man. You will see all of that same old tired tropes at this point in the Disney movie once again. And it's at a time when they're pushing to strip us away of our civil liberties. They're pushing to strip away our rights, both the Second Amendment and even our basic freedom of speech, our basics to talk here on the internet openly, to have open discussion. These are all under siege. And I have very little faith that the new Disney Bambi movie will protect those rights or treat them in a respectful way, given the current political climate and the climate within Disney. But I want to know what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments below. Please leave a comment. What do you think Bambi will be like? What do you think the series will be like, or whether the show will be like, or anything that's spun off of that or based on Bambi? Do you think there'll be a spinoff? Do you think it'll even get produced? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you next time. Peace.